done.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to Salam Media. You with Irfan Mangera on News and Views. We've had some really good speakers so far, and now joining us is Rashid Seedat, who is a board member of the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, who also works as the executive director of the Gauteng City Region Observatory, which is an urban studies research partnership. He was a struggle activist in the 1980s, very well known and contributed towards the formation of the UDF through the likes of the Lenasia Youth League, Transvaal Indian Congress. He has served as the NC Lenasia office bearer in the 1990s, better known as Rash to many of his comrades and friends, and had a close relationship with the late Ahmed Kathrada upon his release from imprisonment. Rash, welcome to Salam Media, and today we're commemorating 8 years since the passing of the late Kathy Ahmed Kathrada. We wanted to have you on the show to speak about the legacy that he's left behind for us to reflect on in a time of such conflict, in a time of such despair that people are having. What lessons can we draw from Kathrada? And having gone through the 1980s and as a young leader at the time, what was Kathy's influence on you?
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. Well, I think his influence was profound on many of us and people of my generation. I should say that I'd heard about Kathy from the time of, when I was growing up, because my father also participated in the 1946 passive resistance campaign, as Kathy did. In fact, they 1 month apart. So they were both around 16 years old when they got arrested and were sentenced to a month imprisonment for defying the Ghetto Act in 1946. So of course, in that sort of situation, I saw him as a hero. Somebody with an indomitable spirit, as a child growing up. But I think as an activist, obviously, there was some kind of maturity in some ways. And then I guess the first issue was about his, as an activist in the 1980s, was the fact that he, made this great sacrifice. So, as we were working, trudging along, doing door to door, getting arrested and detained, banned at times, etc., we always looked up to Comrade Kathy and people of his generation, who basically, were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice. I mean, we heard very early on about the fact that Kathy could actually have got a lighter sentence, or even got off if he had appealed the sentence at Rivonia. And in actual fact, he decided that he was going to stick by his comrades and not appeal. So I mean, that is really sort of impactful for a lot of us. And we also heard lots of stories about Kathy during his days in the struggle. In other words, during the 1940s and the 1950s, as he reported in his own memoirs many years later, that he had been in every major trial of the 1940s and the 1950s. So including, for example, the trials of the passive resistance campaign, the defiance campaign of 1950, the treason trial, which continued, and of course the Rivonia trial. I mean, those are the major trials, and he featured in everyone because he played such a central role in the struggle at the time. So I mean, that's what sort of really impressed us about him. I guess the other thing that I'm also personally interested in is, Kathy's command of the history of the struggle. He always said that, he learned it at the knee of his father, Walter Sisulu, in the sense that Tata Sisulu was, the kind of encyclopedia of the ANC and the liberation movement. And Kathy, at very close quarters, as we know, learned a lot about that, and actually studied it while he was in prison, got his honors. So we were also interested in that dimension. and I suppose if you want to bring it forward already, Irfan, I suppose to where we are today or around the time of Kathy's death, let me let me talk about that period. That was the height of the Zuma presidency. Um, and as you know, I mean, we were really, in the clutches of state capture, in quite a major way. And actually, Kathy, in his period of illness and his death, actually took a stand, even during his funeral, in a way, took a stand against Zuma and state capture. I think I'm not going to, maybe for younger viewers, you may not know this, but at the actual funeral and memorial service a few days later, people like the now late Praveen Gordon basically were had been fired in that week when Kathy died, and actually he had become the first major victim of the opposition to state capture. But it was basically the Kathrada Foundation and Kathy's legacy that actually brought us to that point. So the issue about ethical leadership is quite fundamental to Kathy's
Yeah.
personality.
I think you actually, earlier in the first segment of the show, we spoke to future elect who's investing in developing ethical leaders who are going into the public service, and the fact that you can connect that dot right now to say we need more young people who are understanding of the system and who recognize that corruption needs to be combated at all spheres. You also importantly are speaking about the history that often young people are not engaging with because there's this massive push we see in society of this revisionist history that is emerging, that is not recognizing the actual struggles that people like Kathrada and yourself and many of your generation had actually given towards achieving this constitutional democracy we have. In light of that, given where we are as a nation, how do we utilize that lesson? You even mentioned a lesson of, Kathy choosing to see through his trial as a fact that he could have actually gotten a lighter sentence and excused from jail, but chose the path of the higher path because that was an important one to symbol to society to showcase that we in solidarity with each other. Your role now as a person who is in let's say the GCRA and as a board member of the foundation, what investment should we be making to continue this legacy?
Well, let me just say from a personal point of view that in the immediate aftermath of or the end of apartheid, if you like, and during the dawn of democracy, I'd kind of finished university. I was already working in 1994. Um, and I then, very soon after that, basically worked as a public servant for 16 years in the city of Johannesburg, and 10 years in the Gauteng province, where in both cases I was the head of planning for those organizations. And I think that we I think because of the inspiration of people like Kathy and so on. I mean, we weren't just sort of bureaucrats who were there to earn a salary and a living, but we were there to make kind of profound changes to society. And I think in the early years we kind of like made very significant progress. I think until around, in fact, 2008 or thereabouts, when Zuma took over, and I mean things began turning in the wrong direction. So I guess my lesson to young people is that uh, what we do need is not just careerism, but what we need is a commitment. Well, not only to government but to society as a whole. In other words, what do we want to do to actually transform society? And in our different work and professions and daily lives, we need to find ways in which we can make a positive contribution in whatever way. And for me, I think that will be the uh, basically feeding the legacy of Comrade Kathy.
Comrade Kathy indeed stood for deep principles that I think you can clearly see reflective in how you approached your own roles. In fact, it influenced me as a young activist who's come through the Kathrada Foundation. Today, the foundation is hosting a commemorative tribute event, and the title speaks to achieving non-racialism and what must be done to achieve that. Any commentary on that and whether or not we are making headway in the fight for non-racialism and building the society that was encompassed both in the Freedom Charter and thereafter our constitution.
I think that in the early years of the transition after 1994, people like Madiba, Archbishop Tutu, and other leaders of society were basically very strong on how does one think and build a non-racial society. At the time, there was this term, the Rainbow Nation, which a lot of sort of intellectuals would sort of sneer at and say that it's not a very sort of solid thing. It's just a veneer in some ways. There might be some truth to that, but I think the discourse of trying of nation building and coming together as a diverse society was actually very important, and I think some of it still holds today. That glue which is found in the Constitution still holds today, although I think it is being eroded in by two tendencies. The one is a kind of African nativist sort of agenda that many people have, and don't take into account the fact that we had a very non-racial struggle that many of us were directly involved in. And of course, what we're seeing coming from AfriForum and Solidarity, which is a right-wing racist agenda. And I think those two are quite dominant, quite apart from the sort of day-to-day sort of racism, your sort of garden variety or racism, in the street. I think those ones are actually quite dangerous. Because they can pull the entire country. They have a populist tendency, and they can pull it in a left or extreme left, or in fact, left the wrong word, but an extreme nativist sort of way, or an extreme sort of right wing white supremacist way. And I think those are the dangers that we have to fight against. And the work that the foundation and many others are doing basically needs to address that in a variety of different ways, through the education system, through our employment practices, through our day-to-day interpersonal relationships, etc.
Rashid, Seedat, thank you so much for joining us this morning on Salam Media, sharing reflections on the legacy and life of Kathrada, its influence on yourself and many others, and the importance of us taking forward non-racialism. The next segment on the show is actually going to be delving into that with a short panel discussion. But for those who are listening and want to join, the event spoken about, tribute to Kathrada, will be at West Park Cemetery from 9:30 to 11:30 today. Please do join if you are interested. Rashid, thank you once again for joining us, and assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Walaikum salam.
Thank you.